What if you could talk to someone from thousands of years ago? What could they tell you about the world and what it was like to navigate through it? Researchers in Siberia are asking similar questions. Unfortunately, the one with the answers is a tiny animal called a rotifer, and it's not saying much of anything. Sometimes, not even eons on ice can snuff out life, death, and taxonomy. Welcome back to Life, Death, and Taxonomy. It's your 30 minutes of interesting animal information. I'm Joe.
And I'm Carlos.
Thank you to Cassie for the creation of our theme song. To hear more of Cassie's music, please search Cassie Michelle on YouTube or Spotify.
And a very special and thank you to Johanna for the creation of this week's artwork. A very special thank you to Johanna for the creation of this week's artwork. To check that out, you can visit us at our home on the web at ldtaxonomy.com. And an extra super special thank you to our patrons, to Jesse Raspolich, Carol Raspolich, Richard Kaspar, and Lottie and Aubrey. Thank you so much for your support. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks for helping us keep the lights on.
And today we're talking about a Rip Van Winkle for the ages, but more on that later.
Oh man, you chose this one specifically because it does what I long to do.
Take a nap for a long time.
Yes, nap. I say as we've started recording at 10 o'clock at night. But yeah, we are talking about the Bdelloid Rotifer. There's a B at the beginning of that first word, Bdelloid. Bdelloid. It's not pronounced.
I would imagine it isn't.
Because it's impossible. It's not a Bdelloid.
Abdomen.
Yeah, but you have a vowel to it's a run. That vowel is like a running start. Yeah, you can't get over the hill if you're starting like halfway up the hill. You know, you're just gonna roll right back down to the beginning. Yeah, so it's a rotifer. That should tell you everything you need to know about this animal. I think we can probably wrap it up here. Cut to print.
Yeah.
They're also known as wheel animalcules.
Animalcules, remember? Animal molecules, they're tiny animals.
Oh, you mentioned that in the... What was that? Is that the worm episode? I can't remember. We did another very, very tiny animal. Or was that plankton?
Yeah, it was plankton.
That we were covering.
Oh, Doliolidae.
Doliolida. Yeah. It's a Doliolidae with Mary. Yeah, animalcules. Well, animalcules. There's an A there, but animalcules works really well. Right next to the Animaniacs. But we're gonna call it here Rotifer's wives. The Iron Maiden, the Wonder Worm, and the Sleepy Slug.
Okay.
Would you like me to taxonomize this?
Sure.
It's in a kingdom you know, love, and are in. And of course it's Animalia. But barely. No, it's an animal. It's in the phylum Rotifera. So a rotifer is in its own phylum. The class is Bdelloideae. Another one that starts with the BD. The order is Bdelloida, again, starting with a B. The family is Adenetidae. That sounds like my son when I asked him if he's brushed his teeth. Adenetidae.
I did not today.
The genus is Adeneta. And the species is Vaga. Or Vega.
Mm-hmm.
Adeneta Vaga. I think it's probably Vaga. Like saga. So, since we're in the business of naming things, it's time for my favorite part of the show, nitty-gritty nomenclature. This one was a tough one. It's hard to find, to break this up and figure out what these things meant, because I kept putting in Adonetta into, like, hey, can you please translate this for me? And it's like, it is a genus of rotifers. It's like, oh, thank you. I knew that. What does it mean? But now I'm asking you that question. What does it mean? What does Adonetta vaga mean? Does it mean A, outer serpent, B, frozen multitude, C, stationary mouth, or D, old ocean?
Stationary mouth.
Outer serpent, frozen multitude, stationary mouth, or old ocean?
I guess old ocean, final answer.
That is correct. I think it's the first one you've gotten correct in a while. I've managed to stump you.
Yeah.
For maybe a few months now. I thought this one would stump you because it's just a bunch of it's random words, it seems. Yeah, Adonetta
I knew
means
it wasn't frozen. We'll talk about it later. I knew that couldn't be possible because there's a million of these, and the major fact is only like applicable to one. That was just recently discovered, and actually, the major fact applies to something that is very, very similar to the species the binomial name that we have, but it is an unidentified species. So. It might be that species, but it might not be. So I knew it couldn't be that. And then stationary. Aren't all mouths stationary?
I mean, my mouth moves all the time. That's why we made this show.
We made it because of that?
Because I can't
since
stop
your mouth moves, we
flapping
might
my
as well
gums.
do a show.
Might as well
Anyway.
record what comes out of your face. And
I know ironically, they like fresh water. So, like, it's not even an ocean-going creature.
yeah, but that's Vega comes from Old Norse, which means sea or waves. And Adonetta means age or aged. So old. All right. Would you like to know what this thing looks like?
Sure.
So, if you if you've lived under a rock and don't know what a rotifer is, let me clue you in. I'm just kidding. Of course, I didn't know what a rotifer was until the instant I started researching this. So these are basically plankton. I mean, they are not taxonomically anywhere close to plankton, but just put plankton in your brain and you'll have a pretty good idea, pretty good starting point for what this looks like. They have around 1,000 cells, which sounds like a lot of cells because if it was dollars, that would be a lot of dollars. But to put it in perspective, humans have between 28 and 36 trillion cells. So 1,000 suddenly doesn't seem like a whole lot. So these guys are very, very, very tiny. They are called multicellular organisms, even though that applies to a lot of organisms, because they just barely have more than a few cells. It's like, oh, I got $2 million. I am now a multi-millionaire, and all the other millionaires just pat you on the head, and they're like, oh, that's so cute. So the rotifer you can only see with a microscope, but when you do look at it through a microscope, it looks like a clear, pregnant slug. or like a ghost that's in his last seconds before Luigi slurps it up with his ghost sucker vacuum machine. We've been playing a lot of Luigi's Mansion, and they kind of do this like weird stretchy thing as you defeat a ghost, and that's what it reminded me of.
Ghost. Yeah.
Most Bdelloids are made up of 3 distinct regions. They have a head, a trunk, and a foot. But rotifers in the genus Adineta, they lack a foot, and instead it kind of all tapers down to a tail. So they have a rounded head. The middle part, it looks kind of like this distended belly, and then it kind of all tapers down to this medium-sized tail at the end, which is why I think they look like a ghost. If specifically a ghost from either Luigi's Mansion or Harry in the Haunted House. If you have ever read Harry in the Haunted House, let us know. Send us an email because it's a very niche thing. But yeah, that's what it looks like. It's a small, clear, pregnant booger. But how small is it, Joe?
That's a great question. Welcome to the Beloved Measure Up segment, the official listener's favorite part of the show, the part of the show when we present the animal size and dimensions in relatable terms through a quiz that's fun for the whole family. It's also part of the show that's introduced by you when you send an audio of yourself saying, singing, or chittering the words measure up into ldtaxonomy@gmail.com. We don't have a new Measure Up intro this week.
Pooh.
So we're going to hear from a single-celled organism.
We're going to hear from Osmosis Jones.
How did you know?
Because it's the only single-celled organism that I've ever heard a voice come out of.
Without further ado, listener's favorite part of the show. Why you hit so hard? He said.
I think that was from the trailer. I remember there was one movie I used to watch. Maybe it was Space Jam or something like that, and there was a commercial for Osmosis Jones in it, and that I remember hearing that over and over again.
Probably.
Sometimes I forget that Chris Rock and David Hyde Pierce worked on a movie together. And
that's true.
And I guess Bill Murray, probably not at the same time, but
yeah, they might not have ever met.
I'm sure they've met at some
that.
point. But yeah, probably not. Maybe not even on that project. But yeah.
Let's talk about length. They're between 150 and 700 micrometers. It's a little U with a teardrop and an M.
Okay.
How many rotifers go into the weight? How many rotifers go into the height of a Rottweiler?
Like from pads to withers?
Yeah.
I saw a Rottweiler for the first time in a while, with enjoying the breeze out of somebody's window in their car. I was like, oh, I haven't seen a Rottweiler in a while. They're fun dogs when you're not on their bad side. Do you have a hint that you're going to interrupt me with?
Here's a hint. A Rottweiler is fully grown around the 2-year mark. It is considered one of the oldest surviving dog breeds, with roots that date back to the Romans, and they are said to have accompanied the Legion across the Alps.
So this is one of those dogs that they like attached a sickle to so that they could go and like disembowel horses.
No, they were mostly for like driving and protecting herds.
Something tells me that Rottweilers don't make great sheepdogs, but what do I know?
That's what they still do today.
Do they?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 36 inches, just a straight 3 feet. 1,700.
Final answer?
Yep, 1,700. Little Rotifers go into the height of a Rottweiler?
The correct answer is 985 rotifers.
Something must be off.
Rottweilers are about 69 centimeters or 2.2 feet.
What? A Rottweiler?
Mm-hmm.
The last Rottweiler I hung out with was named Dillinger, and my boss brought him into work, and that was a big dog. Couldn't have been 2 feet tall. 2.2.
According to the FCI standards, Rottweiler stands between 61 and 69 centimeters, or 24 and 27 inches, at the withers for males.
Because then, like, a Rottweiler is like a above average sized dog, and then like a Mastiff or a Great Dane or a Saint Bernard. That's like a 3.5 foot dog, or 4 foot. And maybe that's way too much.
Let's talk about class size. There's about 450 described species that qualify as Bdelloid rotifers. So, how many rotifer classes go into the total number of high school graduating classes in the total number of high school graduates in 2020?
In the United States?
Yeah, in the United States. Here's a hint. There were 3 million high school graduates in the U.S. in 1980. Montana has the highest graduation rates.
I have no clue. Probably more than 3 million. I know you're anchoring me, but I can't help but use it as an anchor. I want to say that more people are graduating high school. Not only are there more people, but there are more people are graduating more. There are higher graduation rates across the board. I don't know that, but I'd like to think it. So I'm going to say 10 million, which accounts for a doubling of the size and quite a bit of change, a tripling of it. No, that's too much. 7 million, a doubling of the size and then some change. All right, my answer is 15,500 graduate classes of rotifers.
Mm-hmm. Final answer?
Go into the number of people that have graduated high school 2023.
2020.
Yes. 2020. Is that a trick question because they delayed high school graduations? They eventually got graduated.
No, that's just the most recent accurate data I could find. Actually, there was a chart, and 2020 was the second to last one, and the last one was 2024 to 2025's year, and there was a number for it. So these guys were soothsayers.
Prescient.
Somehow. But the answer is 8,000 rotifer classes. Man. There were 3.6 million students that graduated in 2020. I was
optimistic for no reason.
So the anchor was almost like a reverse psychology anchor, where it really was close to 3. I said 3 million in 1980, and there was just a little bit of mustard on that. 3.6 today.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot more people than there were in 1980. Not twice as many people, but that's why I was I'd like to think that graduation rates are higher because college degrees are higher than they were in the 80s.
Do you have any?
All right, you want some fast facts before we get into the main? Yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth because we've said them 302 times now. That's not true. We didn't start the general info and major fact until a little ways down the line. But so the rotifers in general live in freshwater habitats all over the world. They eat bacteria, algae, and detritus, and they do this by creating tiny currents of water around their mouths by using these tiny hairs called cilia, which you've heard us talk about before. They're sometimes used for motion. They're sometimes used for feeding. It's just little hairs. And by moving them, they can create kind of a small suction current and bring water containing their food, like bacteria and algae, into their mouths and stomachs, specifically into a grinding organ, not an organ grinder, a grinding organ called the mastax, which sounds like allergy medication.
I was going to say it sounds like money you have to pay to the government if you're overweight.
That's hilarious. I mean, if we ever went to a universal healthcare system, then there probably would be an extra tax for
mass.
For putting more, for taxing the tax system, the healthcare system even more. You're going to be taxed. Mass tax, yeah. That's pretty good. That's better than my idea. So, rotifers are free swimming, but they can also slide if they come into contact with a solid surface. Most rotifers would use the inchworm method, where they throw their head forward and then gather up their tail and then their foot and then head foot. But the rotifer that we're covering does not have a foot, so it mostly slides along surfaces when it encounters them. One of the many interesting things about the Bdelloid rotifer is that there are no males, only females, which is why I called this rotifer's wives. Joseph is just having the worst time.
He can't run. There's nowhere to run.
He runs from one rotifer's wife to another. She's just standing in the doorway. You can't flee from evil when it's all around you, can you? And your name is Joseph, so it works perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Since there are only females rather than usual sexual reproduction that animals do, they reproduce through parthenogenesis, which we have mentioned before, specifically with a gecko, whose name I can't remember, but it clones itself. There are almost exclusively female geckos of this type, and she reproduces by self-germinating. So there's no fertilization that actually happens. Basically, just cloning themselves. Their germ cells. So a germ cell is either sperm or an egg. The female's egg just begins to undergo meiosis. Starts to multiply, and with the exact genetic code of the host parent. I'm trying to remember what the name of that. The mourning gecko. That's what it's called. Yeah. So essentially, cloning itself. One species, which is the species that we're talking about today, Adeneta vega, and let me know if I'm stepping on any toes, can actually repair its own DNA using a complicated process involving its cells. So there's one thing for like an axolotl to repair its arm or its spine or something like that. It's another thing when your DNA gets damaged. There's very little you can do about that, but the this Rotifer is able to repair it. It very quickly gets far outside of my ability to understand it. My just pedestrian scientific knowledge. So here's a sentence that exists about it, and you can make of it what you will. Germline DNA repair occurs in a specific period of oogenesis during which homologous chromosomes take on a meiotic-like juxtaposed configuration. So if that meant anything to you, you are already a researcher of the Rotifer.
I know some of those words, and maybe like two of them. The and juxtapose.
Yeah. Configuration. I mean, I know most of these words. It's just putting them all together. A bunch of big words in one sentence. It's just like you're trying too hard. So enjoy that sentence. And that's all I got. I'll leave the rest to you for the major fact.
Okie dokie. I'm calling this major fact Millennial Thaw. Tardigrades are known to be tough, tiny titans. In fact, I think that was our third episode. It was about tough, tiny titans. They have been revived after being frozen for up to 30 years. But our friend the Rotifer beat that record by millennia. In 2021, researchers in the Arctic took a core sample that was dated to be around 24,000 years old. They dated it with an accelerator mass spectrometer, which means that they electrocuted the ice and shot it past magnets until it gave in and told them its age.
They tortured it for its birthday.
I looked up like what that does, a spectrometer, mass spectrometer, and it's so complicated, like shooting things at a percent of the speed of light and like particles, and then counting the atoms when they hit the wall in this tube, and then that tells you the age of the thing somehow. It's basically carbon dating, but a method of carbon dating that is the most current, I guess.
Okay.
And apparently it like carbon dating. I don't know. Carbon dating is interesting because it's like,
to say the least.
If you read about carbon dating, they're like, it can detect the age of something up to 60,000 years. But we make claims with carbon dating that are way older than 60,000. So, whatever.
It is a little weird.
Anyway, they thawed out rotifers that were frozen in the ice for 24,000 years. Those rotifers were in a state of cryptobiosis, which is basically as close to a stop to metabolism as you can get without dying. But then they defrosted them, and they were able to move around, eat, and even reproduce. Something that was frozen for 24,000 years. They were contemporaries of the humans that left the first footprints that we have today. I'm sure the ones before the humans before those guys were also leaving footprints, but theirs were getting washed away by the.
So theirs were gross.
Yeah, so we didn't save them. We didn't.
I almost called this Captain Steve Rotifers, but it seemed like it didn't work. It seemed too elementary, but now I'm seeing that it's even more appropriate. I just wish I could have come up with a better pun.
So freezing something helps to avoid decay, which is why you put your chicken in the freezer. But it presents another problem. Ice crystals. Ice crystals are sharp, fractal-like crystal structures that form when something freezes, And you can see them form if you look up a video of a bubble freezing, which is fun to see. But you can see these ice crystals forming, and they look sharp. And these crystals tend to destroy cells and animal tissue, which is why you can't thaw out people and dinosaurs that we find in the ice. The rotifers, however, avoid this damage from the ice crystals somehow. Somehow Palpatine returned, and by the same method, these rotifers avoid being ripped apart by ice crystals.
Cloning.
The research
Palpatine
paper
works for the rotifers.
Oh, okay, yeah. The research paper speculates that they must have some, quote, biochemical mechanisms of organ and cell shielding necessary to survive low temperatures. But now that you said the thing about like them being able to repair their DNA, I wonder if it has something to do with that. Their regenerative ability. So it was previously.
You only have 1,000 cells, so if some of them get damaged, I mean that's a huge percentage of what they had.
Yeah, but they're easier to keep track of. I have a lot of cells that I can't even manage them, so they die, fall off.
Yeah, they've probably named all their cells.
So it was previously thought that extremely long-term cryptobiosis would be impossible for multicelled organisms. So your dreams of being Demolition Man were dim. But new research into rotifers and certain nematodes that can be frozen for 32,000 years should have done that one. And there's been plants that have been thawed out and continue to grow after thousands and thousands of years. This research has revealed even complex organisms can be frozen and thawed. Researchers are even using these organisms to learn how we might be able to cryogenically preserve human cells, tissue, organs, stuff we might need to save for later on.
And eventually, entire Ellen Ripley's.
Yeah. So we can go to the Andromeda Galaxy.
Yeah. And die in space. I'm not really sure what the plan is when we get there.
Plant a little flag. But that's all I got.
That's a long time to be asleep.
Can you imagine? Like just something that's like frozen for 32 or for 24,000 years. If only it knew anything.
Yeah. Wakes up and now there's Reddit. Probably pretty confusing. It's like when I went to sleep, there were 17 humans. And
they were walking around on the beach.
When I woke up, there was X.com.
They missed Twitter entirely. It's now X.
They missed a lot entirely. Twitter is definitely one of them.
Although they came out in 2021, so I think Twitter was still Twitter for a little bit.
Yeah, Twitter was still Twitter until this year. All right, that's the Bdelloid Rotifer, a clump of 1,000 cells that lives for tens of thousands of years. So, for you out there in podcasting, keep those cilia moving. Sleep for 24,000 years. And work on the meiotic juxtaposed configuration of your homologous chromosomes like the Bdelloid Rotifer here in Life, Death, and Taxonomy.
Hey Taxonomy Titans, I just want to remind you that we now have a Patreon. Patrons can see full video episodes and get shoutouts on the show. But ultimately, it's a way for you to help us cover some costs and get even better. Still, reviews are the best way to help us grow. So if you haven't left one yet, we'd really love to hear from you. As always, thanks for listening and engaging.
Life, Death, and Taxonomy is my favorite in the world podcast.
Hey guys, what'd I miss? Literally everything. You missed so much. There's no dinosaurs.